Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, February 20th, 2025. I'm back. I made it. A little outpatient procedure that everyone needs to go through every once in a while once you reach a certain age. And all good. Back. I had some nice anesthesia yesterday. Honestly, we should all be doing that all the time. It was terrific not to be thinking about how Donald Trump and Elon Musk were destroying the country, just briefly. We'll see whether that holds up and whether any of the payments that are supposed to come through will be processed correctly, or whether the banking system collapses and I need to go out and mine gold in order to pay the hospital or something like that. Gold back in the forefront. We mentioned briefly, I think we might have snuck it into the end of the show, or maybe even the beginning of the show, because it probably shocked me. Like, oh no, I can't believe this is happening again. On Tuesday, and then I think we made some mention of it in what we recorded for you yesterday. How'd you like the extra 5 minutes? So we have to thank Justice Putnam for allowing us to go run long. I had plans to kind of pare that back so it would fit correctly, and I basically ran out of editing time and I couldn't justify driving the in-house editing crew crazy looking for ways to trim that. So I appreciate just bending the rules a little bit and allowing us to go forward with that. But yesterday afternoon, Donald Trump joined in the fantasization about Fort Knox, and it's been about, well, let's see, how long have we been saying this? I think I've been tweeting the prediction, and it's not a good one. The prediction that Donald Trump would loot Fort Knox at some point, whether he empties the whole thing into Pervalago or not, as we like to joke, or whether he just steals a couple dozen gold bars for himself because he loves gold. I'm not sure, but we've been talking about that since, I don't know, I guess 2017, 2018, which means it's not a very good prediction. It's now been, 5, 6, how many years is that? So let's say 2017, so 8, going on about 8 years that we've been, mentioning that, which means he never really had any plans to do it. And it's amazing that it took him so long to get around to it. Now, there was an interregnum, and I guess interregnum is the right word now that he has yesterday declared himself king of America. In case you were wondering, like, is it just the Gulf of America? No, it's the whole thing. He went off the deep end yesterday. A White House press office joining with him in repeating that he was to be called king as many times as possible, I guess, and then putting out AI renderings of him in regal garb, and a count on the New York Times to underplay it, of course, saying that he has a fondness for regal something or other. I don't know. At any rate, I guess that was about him declaring the end, in his view anyway, of New York City's congestion pricing scheme. I guess, I don't know, some people have complained about it, although most of the people I hear from about congestion pricing are saying it's actually great and it has reduced traffic enormously, and, you just find a different way to get around town, which is kind of how you normally get around towns like that anyway. And the few people who were being inconvenienced by it was well within their means to actually just pay the congestion pricing and go where they wanted to go, if necessary. And so, of course, Trump found a place to step in and make sure that rich people didn't have to pay any more than they wanted to in order to do the things that they thought were fun. Declared that he was going to bring an end to congestion pricing, and then said, I'm the king, which seemed like a weird tongue-in-cheek kind of reference, but then the rest of the day, the White House press office kept tweeting out pictures of him in crowns and ermine furs and, all sorts of weird stuff. And then he, in speaking to the press, including aboard, I guess, so once again, flying somewhere on Air Force One, and having his press gaggle, and almost falling down from turbulence, too. That would have been a fitting end to to the situation, but insisting to everybody that he was going to. Now he's into the Fort Knox thing. It started, I don't know, actually it started a couple of weeks ago when MAGA weirdos started bringing up the strange theories again. But then in the last couple of days, Elon Musk lit a fire under it saying, if I can burst down the doors of any government office and go in and rampage and ransack the place, it might as well be Fort Knox. And so under the excuse of, we think the gold might be missing, no one knows for sure whether the gold is really there, which I guess is going to later turn into, okay, well, we brought a couple of these bars home, but now they're missing, and I'll blame, I guess, Biden stole the gold bars. Menendez, I don't know, stole the gold bars. And it's risen now to the level where Trump spent the day yesterday saying, I'm going to Fort Knox. Have you heard? The reporters, by the way, not interested at all in that subject. And we're just like, I want to ask you about foreign policy. Why are you joining Russia? Why are you affecting political union with Russia? Is it to own the globalists? Why are you abandoning Ukraine? Why are you trying to extort Ukraine again? The thing that got you impeached the first time. And he says, well, we're not doing that. We're doing something else. But anyway, have you heard? Fort Knox. I'm going to Fort Knox. And spent the day playing at, the gold might not be there. We have to go and check on it. Of course, they actually checked on it the last time Trump was president. I assume they're thinking of blaming, declaring some of it missing and blaming Biden for it. But no one's been in the vault, I don't think, since Steve Mnuchin and Mitch McConnell in his company went with him inside the vault. And apparently, I did a little bit of reading. Apparently, it's not a frequent thing because the vault is sealed in some way, and it's a gigantic pain in the ass to reset everything. So they try to minimize the number of VIP visits that they have to the vault. It's not a tourist attraction, and I don't know. So I guess the president and now Elon Musk can still kick the door down and insist they want to go there. And I don't know. I guess we'll watch that develop. Now there are other things that have been happening. This too, labeled a distraction. Don't look this way. He's doing this, that, and the other, and he's doing all those things. I don't think I'm here to prioritize which ones are distractions for you necessarily. Everything's a distraction. The fact that he's president is an abomination, and anything beyond that, I guess, is a distraction at some level. But Greg Dworkin is here. Let's distract ourselves with the most important distractions, but maybe in reverse order. I don't know. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. Nothing's a distraction. It's all important.
It is.
And each and every thing that Trump does that's outrageous and ridiculous and bad actually chips away at his approval rating, which is pretty low right now.
That's
I think he's
good.
+2. Obama at this point in his presidency is +20, which is far more typical. So he's not especially popular. Still. And G. Elliott Morris points out a Gallup poll, which just registered Trump's worst economic approval rating ever, -12.
Well, it's the
economics. We're talking economics. We're talking about the price of eggs here. We're talking about all the stuff that we say is important, that voters say is important.
Yeah.
And so, none of it is a distraction. But I have to say, as far as your predictions go, most of them actually are pretty good. I'm not sure about the one you made about in the end Trump was going to get sucked out of a small plane window.
Well, I meant large.
Battling with a British secret agent. I'm not sure that one's actually going to happen. But he's really interested in Fort Knox.
Yes, that's true. I was going to say it was a bad prediction only because it's like, what does Trump love more than gold? Nothing.
He loves only gold.
Only
gold.
He was eventually going to go there. So I got falling off of a log type
he
of
loves only
prediction. And the fact that he should have done it a long time ago. I mean, I don't want him to, but we would have thought he did it immediately. Shows what a bad prediction it really was. But it seemed like such a joke, and here we are.
Well, he loves gold plate, gold paint.
Right.
Things that aren't really gold but have a veneer of gold. That's really what he loves.
Well, as you are well aware, everything that glitters is gold. I believe that's an old saying.
Yeah, well, not all who wander are lost.
Oh, well, that may be the case. But the gold thing is definitely true.
Absolutely. Anyway,
all right.
Let's mix movies here.
Right.
James Bond battled Gandalf on the bridge. Deep in Moria. So
there's gold in everything.
The thing that I want to start with, I guess I started with Gallup and Trump's economy.
It's not about what
approval.
You want.
Approve 42, disapprove 54. This is only going to get worse, folks.
Yes.
That's the thing to really be aware of. But
True.
I want to start with an earlier era.
Oh.
And, people may say...
The Gilded Age?
Isn't that a turn of speech that people on TV and radio and movies like to say?
Yeah.
Steve Martin used to use it all the time in his retunes. But Steve, you might say. But Greg, why are you so obsessed with the Nixon era? Well, and my answer to that is, well, because I remember it. And frankly, you should be obsessed with it as well, because it explains so much about what's going on. So I want to start with this Britannica, not Encyclopedia Britannica, but Britannica Online.
Huh. They're just Britannica
now.
Like KFC.
About a fellow named John Mitchell.
Oh.
And what's that got to do with Eric Adams? You'll see.
Okay.
Give me a moment. So John Mitchell, Attorney General of the United States, died in 1988. He was Attorney General for 4 years.
Eaten by wolves.
Not, unfortunately, soon enough.
All right.
So during the 4 years of his first term, Nixon had a head of Department of Justice, the Attorney General, who basically was his political appointee. And by political appointee, I mean the following. John Mitchell's expertise was as a bond lawyer in New York City. It happened that his firm and Nixon's firm merged, and so the two got to know each other. And Mitchell became an advisor, political advisor, to Richard Nixon, the politician. In fact, at the point of the 68 election, it turned out John Mitchell was Nixon's campaign manager. Now, it's kind of unusual to appoint your campaign manager to the position of Attorney General. But when you look at what Trump is doing and say, oh, my God, how could he do that? Well, there's a precedent. Nixon did this. Now, if Nixon is your precedent, it's not going to wind up in a good place.
Right.
But I'm just saying, it's happened before.
Sure.
So that's why when things like this happen,
have been
oh my God, how could he do this? I shrug my shoulders and say, happened before. I've seen this before.
All right.
So appointed Attorney General.
It's bad. It was bad when you
Mitchell
saw it.
took office in 69, January 69, remained there until March of 72. When he resigned to head Nixon's re-election committee, had a very famous name, very appropriate name.
Oh, yeah.
Committee to re-elect the president, otherwise known as CREEP.
I don't know why they did that.
During his tenure at the Justice Department, Mitchell became controversial for his backing of two of President Nixon's nominees to the Supreme Court who were rejected as unqualified by the Senate.
They used to do that.
His approval of wiretaps without court authorization, later declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court.
Right.
His prosecutions of anti-war protesters, so going after his enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And his suit to block publication of the Pentagon Papers, which was rejected also by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Now, he resigned as head of the Committee for the Re-election of the President in July 1972, shortly after the arrest of several men discovered burglarizing the headquarters of the DNC in Watergate complex.
Right.
And the short summary is in 1974, he was indicted on charges he had conspired to plan the break-in, that he obstructed justice, perjured himself during the subsequent cover-up of the affair, convicted in 75 and sentenced to 2.5 to 8 years, and he wound up spending 19 months.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear about Emile Beauvais III, who is the hatchet man from the Justice Department, who's doing this Eric Adams case, you think, okay, well, I get that. Is his middle name Ehrlichman or Alderman? Because it sounds like
maybe.
It. Now, the thing about Mitchell is it's not just that he's a crook. And it's not just that he was convicted and spent time in jail for this cover-up thing. Yeah. During the time that the break-in happened, the Britannica piece is really good at summarizing the fact that at the time, the break into the DNC, third-rate burglary. They did a very successful job of spreading rumors, tamping down the story, saying that it was nothing. But it turns, who broke into the Watergate complex? The Cubans.
Someone else, yeah.
People hired who had formerly been active in CIA activity against Fidel Castro in Cuba, leaving out the fact that the fifth of the trio, James McCord, was security chief of the committee to re-elect the president. You see the connection here?
Yeah, he was just accidentally there.
Well, it turns out that two up-and-coming Cub reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, noticed the connection.
Yeah.
And they started, as Mark Felt would later say, deep throat, following the money.
Yeah.
So
that's where
Mitchell,
that comes from.
Nixon's former attorney general, is head of CREEP. The security chief of CREEP was involved in the break-in. The rest was reported in the next morning's Washington Post in an article written by Alfred Lewis, Carl Bernstein, and Bob Woodward, the latter two a pair of relatively undistinguished young reporters relegated to unglamorous beats. The Watergate break-in beat.
That was just local crime at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Still new to the Post. Soon after, Woodward and Bernstein and FBI investigators identified two co-conspirators in the burglary. E. Howard Hunt, a former high-ranking CIA officer.
Right.
James McCord probably knew him, et cetera, et cetera. And Hunt happened to be on the staff of the White House. And G. Gordon Liddy, former FBI agent working as a counsel for CREEP.
Yeah.
And at the time of the break-in, Liddy had been overseeing a similar attempt to break into George McGovern's office.
Okay. I mean, not okay, but I hear you.
The preponderance of early media reports driven by a successful White House public relations campaign claimed there had been no involvement by the Nixon administration or the re-election committee. Meanwhile, the conspirators destroyed evidence, including their burglary equipment, stash of $100 bills. Jeb Magruder, deputy director of CREEP, burned transcripts of wiretaps. The president, his chief of staff, H.R. Haldeman, and special counsel Charles Colson spread alibis around Washington, and E. Howard Hunt sort of disappeared for a while. However, on June 23, 1972, the president, through channels, ordered the FBI to tamp down its investigation of the break-in. That was on tape. They became known as the Nixon tapes, and ultimately that was the smoking gun that got him thrown out of office. I'm saying this because when you put a political appointee at the head of Department of Justice, number one, stuff like this happens.
Yes.
And number two, it takes a while to come to fruition. So the original report was, minor burglary, page 19, bottom. And it turned out it led to the only resignation of a president in the United States in U.S. history.
Yes. Now, I guess the big worry is, one worry is, have they learned from the mistakes that sunk them last time? And
yes, they're not covering it up.
Yeah.
Remember, it's the cover-up. Not this time. They're doing it out in the open.
I think
they're telling
right.
everybody what they're doing, and that's what leads us to the Eric Adams situation.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Well.
Okay, because in those days, you didn't tell people what you were doing.
Yeah.
In these days, you tell them and say, what are you going to do about it?
I guess so.
Judge deliberates after the DOJ pushes to end corruption case against New York City Mayor Adams. This is from NPR. Pretty neutral source. NPR.
Oh, okay. Because there's a Maryland or Maine, Massachusetts. Okay, but this is the ends. Not Nebraska Public Radio, National Public Radio.
Attorneys of U.S. Justice Department and Mayor Eric Adams appeared before federal judge Dale Ho.
Hello.
Not the MAGA Ho. This is
that's James Ho,
middle
I think.
of the road Ho. Wednesday afternoon in Manhattan, pressing their case that 5 federal corruption and bribery charges against Adams should be suspended. And normally, such requests are granted readily, but Judge Ho said, not in this case. This is really complicated. I want to hear what you have to say. And ultimately, he said, it's so complicated, I can't rule from the bench. You'll hear from me very soon. I'll issue a ruling, but I have to work through this. It's complicated. So he didn't get the normal, okay, yes, of course, I'll just sign this and then move on to the next case.
Now, he might. But it was, we suggested early on when we were going through the paperwork that had to happen, this could land in front of a judge who ordinarily would rubber stamp it, but has the right to say, tell me more.
Well, here's the tell me more and why it's so interesting. Émile Bové III, who once served as attorney for President Donald Trump, also said,
isn't that amazing?
The decision to suspend the case was motivated in large part by national security concerns and a desire for Adams to pursue migrants in New York City who lacked legal status. Under questioning by the judge, Bové said that canceling a criminal trial would allow Adams to, quote, get back to work unburdened and unhindered. In fact, what is happening here is that Bové, in the memo to the court and in court, basically said, look, this is a quid pro quo. Of course it's a quid pro quo, but it's an important one. It's really important that Adams follow through on Trump's political agenda, and dismissal of his bribery and corruption charges have nothing to do with the merits of the case. It has everything to do with we need him to do our political agenda. He's just said this in open court. The DOJ's dismissal memo, says the article, sent on February 10th, said bluntly that a criminal trial would interfere with Adams' ability to carry out one of Trump administration's key policies. The pending prosecution has unduly restricted Mayor Adams' ability to devote full attention and resources to the illegal immigration and violent crime that escalated under the policies of the prior administration, says the memo. So in other words, DOJ is asserting that just as the Supreme Court said Trump can do anything he wants, we say that Adams can do whatever he wants so long as he's following what we tell him to do.
Right.
And the judge said, okay, I'm not ruling from the court. I think I'm going to give you a written opinion on this one.
Yeah. And I think it's going to come from in hiding.
But I think it's important.
Have to.
Okay.
Yes.
So the point here is, why are you focusing on Watergate? Why are you focusing on New York City? We have national things to talk about. Well, this is Watergate and this is national.
I think that makes a good point. I agree, and it's an excellent point, and definitely, you've made it before, needs to be made every couple of days, as people are understandably frustrated. Why aren't these people, whoever they are, doing more, doing this, doing that, and we'll never get past this unless all true, all things have to happen, but, yes, they do sometimes, one, take some time, and two, things that some people might point to and say, no, that's a distraction. I don't know about that. They may develop into something major, actually, and you should follow all leads. And I know it's exhausting. You don't have to follow every single one. We can divide them up. But, yeah, absolutely true. And they spent months and months saying this was nothing. And the majority of the mainstream press said, yeah, it is nothing. Except these two guys over here said, I think it might be something, and I got nothing to lose because otherwise I'm covering local crime.
So the piece in NPR goes on to say, while Adams' legal fate hangs on Ho's ruling, his political future also hangs in the balance. 4 of his deputy mayors resigned this week because of Adams' scandals and his deepening ties to Trump's immigration policies. Adams also faces a fiercely contested Democratic primary in June,
right,
where he's going to have to go against Andrew Cuomo, probably.
I don't believe
followed by the general election in November. Meanwhile, New York's Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul, long considered a political ally of Adams, barf.
I mean,
it doesn't say barf in the article, but I'm telling you, it's a stage direction. It's like in the brackets, barf.
Oh, I'm supposed to barf?
Weighing whether to use her authority to remove him from office. Now, Hochul is a ditherer.
Right.
She dithered forever about congestion pricing. Sure. Finally, after the election, put it in place. It turns out to be incredibly popular. Trump is threatening to remove it because the people it affects most, in his view, are his voters on Long Island. So it's not surprising he's doing that. Hochul naturally is saying, no, it was a wonderful thing, my idea all along. I love it, and I'm completely behind it. We're going to sue. Okay, fine. That's politics. I get that.
All right.
But the idea that she was considered a political ally of Adams is only made worse by the remembrance that Hochul was a pick of Andrew Cuomo, the disgraced Andrew Cuomo, I should say. Yeah. So the idea that Hochul was going to do something, well, of course she's going to wait for Judge Ho to rule. She's not going to do a thing until he does.
Yeah, and ordinarily you might think that's okay.
It's a normal political thing. Everybody wants everybody else to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
The New York City Council is threatening him with the Inability Committee.
Yeah. They need to change that name.
Because, ability beyond disability. I don't know what the story is here.
Kick him out or not committee.
The idea is that the city council would like the governor to do it. The governor would like the city council to do it. Everybody wants Judge Ho to do it, so they don't have to.
Right.
They're all waiting to see what's going to happen. I understand all of that, too. So that's one of the other reasons why it's going to take a while. But he has to go. And what's happening now is that city council members are starting to, including black city council members who said right to the camera, it shouldn't be about race, but we happen to be his constituency, and you need people like us to say he needs to go before he can go. Al Sharpton said the same thing.
Okay.
So it's just the politics in New York. You got to do this. You got to do it, step by step.
Yeah.
He's the second black mayor. You don't just remove a black. We're not Trump. We don't just remove a black mayor. We're not calling Adams a DEI candidate.
Right. True. I suppose you could.
We are not Republicans. We have to do this carefully. It's one of the reasons why normies look back at the Democratic Party and say, will you just get off the pot and just do something? They will. It's just going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah. No, I think it's absolutely true, and it's a very astute observation that we have to take that into consideration. It's something we point out with Republicans all the time. You're targeting him because he's black. Well, let's make it clear that that's not the case. But yeah, the pressure is growing, and I mean, it's funny as the pressure grows and more people come out. I guess Emile Beauvais will be saying, you see, this is the kind of distraction from his important job that I was talking about. We'll see whether the judge buys any of that. I doubt it. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Let's continue our stroll down memory lane / what's happening right now. Two lanes happening. Although I made the point, I just want to be very explicit about the point about what Emile Beauvais is saying. Now, what is he saying?
Eric Adams is one of the parties.
Yes.
He would like these charges dropped. His lawyer, I think Anthony Spiro.
Alex Spiro, though. And you know what? There's a Spiro in both of these things, and it's driving me crazy.
Well, this guy is basically a crook and a liar, saying, of course, there's no quid pro quo, and even though you didn't ask me to do it, I'm swearing in court on a stack of Bibles that there's no quid pro quo. Says Adams'
Trump
side.
Bibles. Yeah. And
the government side is Emile Beauvais, who is trying out for one of Richard Nixon's Ehrlichman roles in the next iteration
I think so.
of All the President's Men. And Beauvais says, look, not only was there a quid pro quo, it's a very important quid pro quo. We need to establish as a principle that people in the Department of Justice have to bend to the will of the president. They are here to do the president's bidding. Anybody who doesn't want to can resign, and they should resign, frankly, and get out of my way. And we need Eric Adams to follow what the president tells him because the president told him. And we are not a country of laws. We're a country of he's the king and you have to do what he says. And the thing that we learned from Watergate is that the cover-up is worse than the crime, and so we're not covering anything up. We're telling you out front. This is to make the Department of Justice as political as possible. That's why this is such an important case.
That is true. Now, I will observe that the line was that I've seen two variants of it. There's one is that the cover-up is worse than the crime, and then it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. And that's the formulation they're going with. Because if it's just that the crime is worse than, or the cover-up's worse than the crime, well, the crime could be heinous and the cover-up worse. There's always that option.
But stand down, there's no cover-up. We're telling you up front what we're doing.
Right. So that's the theory. I mean,
this is the billboard from the New York
theory.
Cartoon, with the wolf in a suit saying, I'm going to eat you, and the sheep talking to each other and saying he tells it like it is.
Yeah.
And they voted for him.
This is just, I guess, the unitary executive theory gone wild, which is why, by the way, many years ago, even well before we had this show, when I was writing at, when both of us were still writing at Congress Matters, at Daily Kos, everything, and during the George W. Bush administration.
You've written a lot of places.
When they laid out this unitary executive theory, it was really pretty clear. And I think we referred to it frequently as relitigating Watergate, because that's what it was, saying the problem that got us kicked out in Watergate was that we overtly politicized the Department of Justice, but we still maintain that was okay and that we got a raw deal in Watergate, so we're going to try it again and see if we get away with it.
It's not a crime. And so the Supreme Court ratified that finally.
Eventually, yes. They didn't do it
Kavanaugh
for W.
and Roberts were part of that deal.
Right. And that, too, also well worth pointing out. The George W. Bush administration tried relitigating this. They relitigated it under the direction of Dick Cheney, who was attempting to relitigate it the first time as the ranking minority member in the Iran-Contra hearings. And that investigation didn't succeed in relitigating Watergate there, but laid the foundation in the Minority Report there, became vice president, i.e. made himself vice president, by the way, and then spent the bulk of the W administration attempting to set up this unitary executive theory that would allow for this. And you may recall when we use trigger words like the politicization of the Department of Justice, doesn't everybody here remember going through this with the U.S. Attorney's Office? And once again, the political press reacted to that initially with, there's no there. You're making something out of nothing, a mountain out of a molehill. And then, and I guess, same result. First time around, Woodward and Bernstein come from out of nowhere and establish themselves as journalism giants. Second time around, Josh Marshall reports on the politicization of the U.S. Attorney's Office. It's poo-pooed by the mainstream press, and then he establishes himself as correct and a giant of journalism. And then, I guess in the most ironic twist, the whole thing, the leopard turns its face-eating self on the Cheney family and destroys them along the way, and finally comes to the fruition where they now say, once again, we're trying it again. We're going to go into court and argue straight up, the president is immune from everything. If the president does it, it's not illegal. There is a unitary executive theory. Granted, the people who were saying that it was a valid theory have been ground up this time by this unitary body and kicked out for some strange reason. But yeah, this is in a long-term project, and it's now at the point where they say, the lesson learned is do no cover-up. Simply claim outright, we're here because the president says this can happen. And I don't know, I guess I dare you to rule otherwise, and we'll see what happens to you.
That's a very good summary, an excellent summary. But what, are you obsessed with Watergate or something?
No, I just wanted to make you feel comfortable.
Okay, good. So, how are the locals responding to all of this? Well, they're really trying to sort out what's going with Eric Adams, but the general feeling is his political future is limited. His days are numbered, and just a question of how this is going to be orchestrated. Meanwhile, this is a piece by David Wallace Wells, good reporter, in the New York Times, called "Why Trump's Decision to Kill Congestion Pricing Feels Like Such a Gut Punch." And he says, since the program began, belatedly, that's because of Kathy Hochul, on January 5th, much of the commentary swirled around its effect on driving times. In the first week, 7.5% fewer cars entered the zone. MTA announced significantly speeding up commutes in Manhattan, accelerating trips with the borough. Travel times had fallen between 10 and 30%, especially on the bridge and tunnel. So the bridge and tunnel people are now happy. Remember, BTP, bridge and tunnel
money,
people,
but
they're Trump voters. But this was also always a narrow way of measuring success, and frankly, a weirdly car-centered one for what it is. By far, America's least car-centric city. In Manhattan, foot traffic is up. Public transportation traffic is up. There was perhaps 1 million fewer cars on the streets in the zone of Manhattan affected by the program in January. Buses are traveling faster. Late arrivals of students' school buses have fallen by half. Support for the program is growing among those most affected, at least according to one Morning Consult poll, with 6 out of 10 New Yorkers saying it should continue. Those regularly driving into the affected zone and paying its fee supported 66 to 32. So even Trump voters are okay with it. In short, by almost every metric you can imagine, the congestion zone has been a success. But for now, the only metric that matters is the depth of Donald Trump's spite. Remember, his voters are the 32%. For years, congestion pricing has been, in addition to a technocratic dream, and this follows up on something we talked about the last time I was on the show, a cautionary tale about the obstacles to policy progress, about the way transportation authority is shared in New York between boroughs and states and agencies, about the burdens of environmental review, the power of the vetocracy on the left, about the venality and short-sightedness of politicians, even those inclined to support a program like this. But if Trump's kill shot holds up in court, which it may not, it will give a somewhat more unsettling lesson. None of the arguments matter if you have the gleeful rage of the world's most powerful man turned against you. Long live the king, Trump declared Wednesday on Truth Social. White House quickly put the line on a mock-up of a magazine cover in the style of Time magazine and tweeted it out.
Yeah, and they did multiple images. They tried one out with robes.
Not only am I an asshole, but I'm going to rub it in your face.
Yeah.
But that's what that is.
Yes, basically. I don't know where this comes from. The opposition to it from Trump just comes from, I don't know, people were grumbling about something the Democrats did, so I hate it. Even though, I mean, if you look at it from Trump's
want my
normal point of
opposition
view,
government to ever succeed in anything, whether it's
that's
California or New York.
Right.
I'm going to do my federal duty and make sure I make it fail, and then point out only I could make it work.
Yeah. I think that's what underlies the whole thing. He's got no objection to exclusive access to the Manhattan zone for a higher price. He'd love to pay that and laugh at all the people who can't or won't if he had done it. But he didn't do it. Some Democrats did it, so it has to go. And I think today's target, it is speculated, there's a press conference slated for the Department of Transportation under what's his name, Sean Duffy, the guy from the Real World /
the guy
Congress,
who's watching planes fall out of the sky.
Right. Yeah. Oh yes, and another plane crash yesterday, in case you were wondering. But yes, absolutely true. Still smaller planes and whatever, but that theme
smaller
continues.
Planes don't count, said the Trump administration.
Right. Exactly. But he's going to hold a press conference on California's high-speed rail program, which, of course, normally that's when the Department of Transportation has such a press conference. Boring for one thing, that's true, but they usually end up saying, well, okay, here's X billion dollars, and they're going to do some planning and some blue ribbon panels, and they're moving forward. In this administration, it's expected that they'll go and say, well, California Democrats have been working very hard to make this a reality
but
and bring it forward.
Money for billionaire tax cuts.
So we're going to cancel it, and we're going to try and claw back the money, or we're going to sue California to give us the money that they collected at the state level and give it to Elon Musk. I don't know.
Or we're gonna do it only if California commits to transporting water from Northern California to Southern California on high-speed rail.
Right. And why aren't they shipping the water from Kentucky to California? I wonder. But anyway, it's, so that is on the possible chopping block, whether or not they really have authority to do anything like that. As others have pointed out, most of the funding is coming from California, but that doesn't matter because what's that, a law? We'll declare that invalid, and it'll work itself out over the period of I don't know, the rest of the Trump administration.
Well, the other big story, of course, is Trump's relationship with Zelensky and Ukraine. And, there's not a lot to say about that because it still has to play out. The whole thing is effed up. But David French posted this on Blue Sky yesterday. When I wrote that I was voting for Harris, two of the factors that pushed me, the conservative, the super-duper conservative,
all right,
the double-secret probation conservative, from voting third party to voting Harris, were Trump's attacks on the rule of law and his reckless position on Ukraine. Harris was right, and Trump was very wrong, and I'm feeling pretty vindicated by that vote right now.
Okay. I mean, the other reason is voting for a third party would have been dumb and useless.
Well, Ralph Nader wasn't running, so I didn't.
All right. And, of course, the downside is, as it turns out, voting for Harris didn't do anything more. But, okay. We appreciate that he would do that and come back and mention that he was right. When you were talking about Trump's falling approval ratings, one of the things that he did to, distract from that, but also spread useful to him lies about the Ukraine situation, claimed that Zelensky is polling like 4% in his country. There hasn't been an election there. Well, they've been invaded. It's hard to have elections in the middle of an invasion. Hasn't been an election there. He's extremely unpopular. He's illegitimate as a leader. This straight from Russia, of course. And a lot of people also pointing out yesterday that developments in these relations, meeting with the Russians bilaterally in Saudi Arabia without the Ukrainians to divide everything up, and then him parroting these lines about Zelensky being illegitimate anyway, also validates a lot of the discussion from 2016 through 2020 that, hey, Trump is actually a bit of a Putin puppet and lives in, as Zelensky himself said yesterday, lives in this bubble of Russian disinformation where he just parrots this stuff, and the world is going to have to figure out a way to quarantine him. Either if we were lucky, they could quarantine him from that disinformation, but that they haven't figured out how to do. So they're just going to have to quarantine him from the rest of the world. Realize that when he speaks, it's Putin's voice.
By not saying a word about it,
yes,
Republicans are really setting themselves up for a beating in the next election.
Gosh, I hope so. And there's precedent for it. The midterm elections during the last Trump administration were a disaster.
People who are not happy with the economy are not going to give the Republicans a lot of slack on Russia.
And I don't think there's going to be many eggs in between now and then, not even Fabergé eggs.
No, there might be a pandemic, but there won't be any eggs.
Right.
So the other news I think is big that isn't going to be in the papers because the papers don't really cover news anymore is that this Sunday there's a big election in Germany. So you want to look at Zelensky and how that's going to play out. Well, it plays out in more than just the U.S. sense.
Yes.
So this is from Al Jazeera, which has a really lovely summary of what's going on. Why has a snap election been called in Germany? In November 2024, Germany's ruling coalition, a three-way alliance, the Stoplight Coalition, the red, yellow, and green parties, three-way alliance between SPD, the Greens, and the Free Democratic Party, or FDP. FDP is basically a neoliberal NAFTA was right party. It's the smallest of the coalition parties. Collapsed following disagreements over the country's weak economy, which led Scholz to sack his finance minister, Christian Lindner, of the FDP party. After months of wrangling, Scholz said he fired Lindner for his obstructive behavior. Which is true. Lindner went out of his way to get himself fired.
Okay.
So that happened. So then a confidence vote was held in Parliament. Scholz lost, paving the way for the February 23rd parliamentary election, which would make it Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Which main parties are contesting this election? The country has two centrist parties, actually groups. Scholz, SPD, and the coalition. And then his opposition, which Angela Merkel was from, is the Conservative Alliance, which includes the CDU, the National Party, and the CSU, which is the Bavarian equivalent. Think Democratic Farmer Labor in Minnesota.
Okay. I see.
Right, so there's the Democratic Party and then DFL in Minnesota, and together they make the National Democratic Party.
The Bavarian
so this is CDU and CSU. This is Bavaria, which is very large, very powerful, very conservative, and the heart is CSU, and then CDU. Mm-hmm. In recent years, these parties have been losing support in general, and smaller parties from both sides of the political spectrum have been gaining, including the Greens,
both sides,
and the odious and villainous far-right AFD.
Mm-hmm. J.D. Vance's favorite.
Yeah. And they have gained, and that's
Musk.
Elon Musk's favorite as well. Right. Besides these players, the FDP, of course, the far-left Linke, the left-leaning BSW, they're all running, and they're all potentially coalition people.
Okay.
So the left has sort of a chartreuse, purplish color. BSW is orange, SPD is red, Green is green, the FDP is yellow.
Come on.
CSU, CDU is black, AFD is blue. So the worry is that CDU will win, and the head of the CDU is a fellow named Friedrich Merz, M-E-R-Z.
Wow. Fred
and
Merz.
He will probably, what happens in Germany is that you basically have these political parties running. It's like you're having the congressional election.
Yeah.
Right. Neither the Democrats or the Republicans will have a majority.
Yes.
And if the Republicans get a majority in the House, they elect a speaker.
Well, yes.
Because the head of the Republican Party in the House is going to be the speaker. It's simplistically, that's how it works.
Unless they vote for Superman, because you don't have to be a member of Congress.
Even if there's no song for this from, I'm Just a Bill. But
okay.
Schoolhouse Rock. The whole thing, though, is that in Germany, you do this parliamentary election, and then whoever's head of the party becomes the chancellor.
Right.
So if CDU wins a majority in the equivalent of the Congress in Germany, then instead of becoming speaker, he becomes chancellor.
Yeah.
However,
like Hitler.
Coalition government.
All right.
In Germany. So usually what happens these days is that no one party wins enough to just govern by themselves. That's how Olaf Scholz wound up with a red, yellow, green coalition.
Right. Okay.
SPD red, FDP yellow, and the Greens. So if CDU wins, in other words, Friedrich Merz wins, will he go into coalition with AFD, the Nazis, the neo-Nazis?
Sure.
No,
we don't.
He says no.
I mean,
he
no.
He says no.
Well,
but
he
is
says
this
no.
Princess Bride liar?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you do this...
Wait, I have that. Yeah.
If you become in coalition
I'll wait.
with another party, you basically have to give them cabinet positions.
Right. We also in Israel.
He won't do that because he won't give the Nazis cabinet positions if he wins.
All right, and here we
That's
think
the
he's
only
a liar?
way he could win is to say that. Liar! That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
We don't know if that's true. He'll probably get the most votes of any given party, but I don't know who he goes into coalition with. FDP, the yellow group that was fired by Scholz's traffic coalition, could go into coalition because it's a liberal, free market, pro-growth party. They could go into coalition with CDU with somebody else, and do it without AFD. That would be okay.
Better.
Unstable. It would be better. But we don't know how this is going to play out. So there's a lot on the line here. And dare I say it, need I say it, who wins the German election is going to have a whole lot of influence on what happens with Ukraine.
Yes.
So if you want to talk about Zelensky and Trump, you got to wait. If you want to talk about Eric Adams, you got to wait till Dale Ho decides what he wants to do. And if you want to talk about Zelensky, you got to wait and see what Germany's going to do on Sunday. And those are the two big stories, and that's why you need all this background before you can really jump into them.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, the show's over. Sorry.
All right.
We'll talk about it some other time.
Well, for you it is. For me, I'm still stuck on the fact that I think, is it MERZ?
MERZ.
And by any chance, I need a German speaker to tell me now, is that MERS or is that Mertz? Because if this guy's name is Fred Mertz, I'm going
Z
crazy.
Like Jules.
Are you sure? Okay.
Reasonably.
that does it. Although it really would be something for Fred Mertz to have taken over in Germany.
No, Ethel and Fred are not going to be running this country.
Are you sure?
And Lucy has nothing to do with it.
Because they would have a lot of splaining
They fired
to
Ricky.
do
They can't.
if that was the case. That's right. They deported him, for God's sake. And send him to Panama instead of Guantanamo somehow. Yes. Well, all good background for all of this. Don't worry about it if your particular item, someone told you it was a distraction. I think we can fit it into the mosaic. It's all of a piece, as they say. But yeah, these are chief topics internationally. They have domestic implications and international implications, every single one of them. Yeah.
In Israel, hostage remains were returned.
Yes.
Implications are vastly political, but unclear. It's weird because
should that be clear?
Israel is really liking Trump right now because Trump basically said they can do whatever they want with Gaza, and they sort of like that idea.
Of course. Get out of the way.
They don't like Netanyahu.
No more pressure. Right. Well,
Netanyahu loves it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
Israel doesn't love Netanyahu. So how this plays out, this is like really bad. It's like these hostages could have been alive if you had done what you needed to do 6 months ago with the same deal that you're doing now, which you would only do under Trump because you didn't want to give Biden credit.
Right.
Now, Israel doesn't like
Similar
Biden
play.
because Biden was trying to put some restrictions on what Israel does. Trump says basically you can do whatever you want so long as they get the Riviera out of it.
Right.
It's really complicated. So we don't know how this is going to play out. Yes, it's true. Ultimately, the reason that these hostages died is because of Hamas. But would they still be alive had they been returned sooner? Because it's the same deal that was offered 6 months ago, and why are you doing it now? What did you do over those last 6 months except get a lot of people killed?
Well, we don't know. And, I mean, we don't know if they were alive 6 months ago. I don't know. Maybe they do because of the nature of the remains that were returned to them. But, yeah, not good. And I think it's just generally acknowledged all across the spectrum in Israel that, yeah, that was the position of the Netanyahu government. We're just not going to do this hostage deal until it's more politically advantageous for me. And they, too, are not covering it up. They're saying,
not covering
we're
it up.
doing
we're just
it.
telling you outright, this is what's going on,
Yeah.
except we are covering it up because we tell the Israeli press one thing and we tell the American press something else.
That could be. I guess in that sense, it's a cover-up. But, yeah, the most extreme weirdos that just a parallel to the German situation that Netanyahu had for a while, at least to include in his cabinet and governing coalition, are the people who, their equivalents here are the Emil Boves, et cetera, saying, oh, I'm not covering it up. We do want to kill everybody. We do think we can just seize land wherever we feel like it. We openly say so, while other parts of the coalition say, no, well, hold on a minute. We don't really believe that. They believe that, and we're allowing them to be ministers in the government, but what can you do? It's just politics. And, wow. All right. I don't know how I feel about depending on the Germans to straighten this out right now. But generally speaking, once again, the German people seem pretty resolute in this. But with splintered politics, all you need is a certain faction of weirdos. I mean, we don't even have that kind of multivariate politics, and a faction of weirdos are able to take over. So I don't know. Best of luck to Germany. I think they've been doing reasonably well of late, and they're surrounded by countries with an interest in making sure they continue to do reasonably well. They're very well integrated into Europe. Yeah. They can't Grexit.
As the great Tom Lehrer said, we taught them a lesson in 1918, and they've hardly bothered us since then.
Yeah, well, it's a hot spot. And I guess if you're watching history repeat itself here in the United States, you got to worry about it happening in Germany.
You got to worry about it everywhere.
So,
anyway, at the same time, sometimes the good guys win, so don't give up hope.
Right, true.
Anyway, we'll talk to you on Monday, right?
Yes, I think so. Is there a reason not to?
I don't know. You having anesthesia or something?
No, although I'm thinking about it.
If I said it was good, so I thought maybe
really
you'd go
was. Back. It was really terrific. Limited duration anesthesia. That's just like, gosh, that's a nice nap. Although, then it was kind of like the rest of the day was, and I'd like to have another one. So it wasn't really, it didn't pass all that quickly.
Without anesthesia.
Yeah. All right. Great. Well, thank you for setting us up and reminding us of the continuing importance of Watergate. That used to be, like the historical touchstone for a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of those people are dead, so
that is
let's
true.
Move on.
I guess you could, but I thought a great lesson from that is.
But in that case, Florida Congress critter might want to have him for a hearing.
Which one?
The one that wanted the Warren
Luna?
Commission.
Oh yeah, that one is Anna Paulina Luna. Yeah. There's a number.
Why don't you have the Watergate people here so we can have a hearing about what actually happened?
Warren Commission people. Yeah, so why not bring in Watergate? Yeah, that too.
Yeah, we'll have a separate hearing.
Dead. Sure.
I could do it with the Warren Commission. Why can't I use the same Ouija board and do
I guess
Watergate?
So. Or I guess they've been doing it in front of the Supreme Court, saying they've been talking with the Founding Fathers and they have the originalist interpretation. Which, ironically, apparently, despite all the things that are in the Constitution and everything we've read about the Revolutionary War, was very much pro-monarchy, actually. We thought it was not, but we've been told we were pretty wrong about that for 250 years. All that ramming of ramparts and taking over of airports wasn't for nothing.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay. Great, except not great. What can you do? All right, well, appreciate it, Greg. We'll take it from here. I don't know where we're taking it, but we're stuck with it, so we got to take it.
Historical lessons are good. Maybe you should go over the French and Indian traffic control incident.
That's kind of what it was, wasn't it? They wanted congestion pricing for protection from Indian raids, and the rabble wouldn't have it.
Not without representation.
Right. That's true. They might have been willing to pay the surcharge had they had adequate representation. And then something, and then the EPA
and then he
fined them for polluting Boston Harbor, and I don't know what happened next.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. And it's music time, so you're free to go.
We should do a Saturday cartoon show.
Yeah, right. Just shorts. That's what they call them now on YouTube. They used to have no word for them. Commercial breaks that taught you something.
Right. Take care.
Very good. Thank you. You do the same. And we'll round up more stories that make either little sense at all or explain everything after this. That's what we do, after all.
Or both.
Right.
Why not?
Both sides.
Says the little girl.
All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, I probably should just mention outright, a little bit, I guess, TMI, you might say. But in terms of, so what happened yesterday? Where was I? Here, public service announcement. People do this from time to time. Make sure you are getting, if you're of a certain age, or even if you're not, actually, you're getting your regular colonoscopies. Yes. It's not that bad. So I have this to say. First of all, it's extraordinarily important and good public service announcement. That's what I was doing yesterday. Clean-ish, I guess, bill of health, right? Everything's good. I have the 5-year clearance, so I can wait for my next one for several years. That's good news, too. Extraordinarily important that everybody get it done. People who are approaching that age, and I guess they're lowering the age now, at which they recommend it, which, you can view it a number of ways. Like, sure, the doctors who get paid to perform these say you should have more of them and earlier. But honestly, you should, because there's little to no point in avoiding it if you have the coverage that will make it, I guess we have to say that in this country. If you have coverage and it makes it affordable, I mean, you should, I don't know, if you don't, save up and do it because, cancer is terrible and no one should have it if they don't have to, and you avoid a lot of trouble by having these things. If you are of that age or approaching that age and you're thinking, gosh, I can't believe I'm getting that old that I need to now have a colonoscopy, and isn't that scary? As exemplified by the horror dramatic music. The answer is no. It shouldn't be. Certainly the procedure itself, I have this to say for you. I have this to recommend for you. When you finally get around to the procedure day, you can look forward to it. Go in with a smile on your face because you'll get wonderful anesthesia. And it's literally, you're in the operating room, closing your eyes. Okay, we're going to make you sleepy now. This will take about a minute to work. And that's a lie. It's going to take about 10 seconds to work. But that's fine. It's a white lie. And everything white is great, as you know, now in this country. And it's kind of always been the case linguistically. But anyway, the stuff works great. And then the next thing you know, they're asking you if you want some water or juice. Or if you wear glasses, do you want your glasses back? By the way, I remember this much. Asking me, do you want me to put your glasses on? No, I'm still sleeping. Leave me alone. Come back later. So it is painless. At least, it was for me. I'm sure some people might find that they have some disruption. But generally speaking, nothing to worry about procedure-wise. The only stuff nobody likes is the prep for it. Womp womp. Yeah, right. Sad trombone for that one. It's no fun. And, you spend a couple of days modifying your diet for various things that they would like you to avoid so that you're, nice and bright and shiny for the procedure itself. So it's a bit of a drag for a couple of days watching what you eat, but everyone hates that. And then, of course, the day before is, liquid diet. And clear liquid diet at that. And so, lots of chicken broth, and you get lemon jello out of it. Apple juice and grape juice, nice sweet stuff that everybody, and you can have your tea and coffee, just no milk, as I understand it. But anyway, and then the bad stuff. Then you have to drink the prep solution, and it's a laxative. And a super powerful one at that. And so you spend a couple hours after that taking care of business, as it were. But, frankly, it's not all that bad. The prep is not painful, and the procedure is not painful, and you don't have to see or hear any of it if you don't want to. So I recommend it. Let's say that. If you're scared of it, honestly, don't be. And the procedure part, if you're thinking that's the scary part, nope, that's the easy part. So don't avoid it on that count. All right, so now that everybody knows, and if you're about 40, 45 years old and you're thinking about it's time, take my word for it. I don't know. You don't have to, because it's health related and your doctor will insist on it. Let's see. Following up on all those other stories that we discussed with Greg, I mentioned to you that President Zelensky of Ukraine had in fact said that Trump was living in disinformation space created by Russia. I saw that all over our own news, but just to drive the point home, for some reason, I'll give you this link instead, just to show you how widely disseminated those remarks are. This is from, Greg brought you public radio, national public radio from the United States. I bring you public radio of Armenia. Who else brings you that? Besides Armenian podcasts. It's true. I just happened to see it on Blue Sky. Public Radio of Armenia. Zelensky says exactly what we said. He said, living in a disinformation space, Trump is. Want their explanation of it? Well, I guess you can go read it if you want. I mean, none of us have ever, I don't think, called out Public Radio of Armenia for this, but I assume they're on the up and up because it's the same thing we read elsewhere. With all due respect, he says, to President Donald Trump as a leader, he is living in this disinformation space created by Russia. The BBC reported originally, and the public radio folks, the good public radio folks over at Armenia Public Radio agree. I would tell you which one in particular, but it's in Armenian, not the article, the person's name. And how's your Armenian? Maybe you're great at it. Siranush, maybe, first name. All right, let's see. What about this last name? Ghaza, Gaza. Gaza. We got to eliminate this. Doge is going to get rid of it. Gazanchian. Siranush Gazanchian. Is that anywhere in the neighborhood of the proper Armenian or anglicized Armenian pronunciation? I have no idea. But even the Armenians agree, and they're notoriously difficult to get to agree. I don't know whether they are, but it seems like they would be proud to say that they were, take their lead from no one, but nonetheless have to verify that Zelensky did in fact say this thing. I don't know. I found that somewhat fascinating to use Armenians as your source. Let's see. Oh, so yesterday I mentioned that I wasn't 100% sure how accurate it was, though, that Alex Spiro, who is representing Eric Adams, I knew that he had done some legal work for Elon Musk. I thought that he may also have done some legal work for Trump or others in the Trump orbit, but he's got a hell of a client roster. Not all great people, we'll say that, but I thought that he might be one of several lawyers now in the Trump administration, some of whom had represented Trump in his criminal cases, others who represented others peripherally involved in the criminal cases who were now landing jobs in the administration. And from inside the DOJ, one might wonder whether they were directing these cases to be dismissed against their former clients. Emil Bove, as we mentioned, I guess did some legal work for Trump. Empty Wheel reminding us that, and he needed reminding, we needed reminding, but so did Stan Woodward, no relation to Woodward of Woodward and Bernstein, but Stan Woodward was representing Walter Nauta. Remember, is he a valet? Is that his job? Down in Pervalago. And of course, he found himself indicted as one of two guys. Who's the other one? De Oliveira, right? Who moved around the boxes of classified materials that, the entire law enforcement apparatus, including Emil Bove, I guess, had acknowledged were illegally removed from the White House and secreted away to Pervalago and scattered around in the bathrooms there. How'd they get in and out of the bathrooms? Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira were the ones carrying them around, and they were criminally indicted as well. Stan Woodward was a Trump land lawyer, was sent to represent Walt Nauta, and guess what? One, he's landed back in the Trump orbit again, inside the Trump administration this time. And two, Walt Nauta gets his case dismissed. But it took a while. Empty Wheel points out here, 1 month after starting work as White House assistant, Stan Woodward remembered, oh yeah, I'm still representing Walter Nauta, and that would be one of those conflict of interest type things. And so he has submitted his motion to withdraw as Walt Nauta's Waltine. Remember, that's his name. Not like Saltine, but with a W. Not Walter Nauta. And guess what? Stan Woodward finally remembers, oh, yeah, I probably should withdraw, and has finally filed the paperwork to do so. I imagine that one will not only go unopposed. It says it's an unopposed motion, but it won't be pondered for very long by the judge, I don't think. All right. We didn't get cut off there. I just had to take a short break to sneeze, and I didn't think you would want to hear that, but I thought you might want to discuss it afterwards. All right. Let's see. Other things that I had put aside while the show was rolling. AmericanOversight.org, if you're looking for them online, has released the news that they are filing a bar complaint against Emil Bove, Deputy Attorney General Bove. Why? For corrupt actions in the dismissal of Eric Adams' charges. Well, we'll see how far that goes, and I guess some of that will depend on the outcome of Judge Ho's pondering of the evidence to see whether any of the pondering leads him to a preponderance, I guess. The organization calls for a full investigation of reported misconduct by Bove, who pushed for the dismissal of criminal charges in return, quid pro quo, for Adams' political cooperation with the Trump administration. As Greg mentioned, the new play is do it out in the open. So, well, one thing you can do if people do that out in the open is file a bar complaint. It's one thing to wonder whether or not the Department of Justice can be bent to Trump's will. Still another to wonder whether the judicial branch as a whole can be bent to Trump's will. And a third thing at that, to find out whether or not the Bar Association can be bent to Trump's will. We'll see, and we'll see whether it's enough to bend the DOJ and the judiciary to disempower the Bar Association along the way as collateral damage. But at any rate, on Thursday, that's today, nonpartisan watchdog American Oversight, they needed to tell you, give you their bona fides here, filed a disciplinary complaint asking New York authorities to investigate potential professional misconduct by, I'm sorry, we need a sound effect. Who is it? It's misconduct by acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, the Justice Department official who oversaw and directed the corrupt dismissal of criminal charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Or we should say, I think more correctly, he is the Justice Department official who is attempting to direct the corrupt dismissal of criminal charges. It hasn't happened yet. That's up to Judge Ho. And I don't know whether it's an appealable thing to, if for some reason he felt like the protection of his family was at some point compelled to accept the dismissal of charges despite his misgivings. I don't know whether it's appealable or who the parties would be who would appeal it. But at any rate, it hasn't happened yet. The complaint sent to the Attorney Grievance Committee in New York. They got all kinds of committees in New York. Inability committees, Attorney Grievance Committees, where Bove is a member of the State Bar, New York, outlines how Bove's pursuit of the dismissal, reportedly based solely on his understanding that Adams would provide political favors in return, and achieved by threatening to fire subordinate attorneys and by claiming the dismissal was appropriate in light of Adams's political cooperation with the Trump administration, appears to have violated several sections of New York's rules governing attorney ethics and professional conduct. Here, I'll just, again, sharpen the point a little bit. I don't know whether it's going to mean anything, but we'll sharpen the point, right? What happens if you install people at all levels in the DOJ and purge everybody who's not in on the scheme and just say, well, we're going to dismiss these charges because it's good for us politically. And if we just say either, there were two roads to go here. One, to say, oh, no, it's not a quid pro quo. We just really think that there isn't enough evidence, right? Prosecutorial discretion. Can we just file it under that and say, don't look any further? You could try that. But I don't know that it was going to work in this case. There's a mountain of evidence. The prosecutors who actually worked the case say you should be bringing those charges, but they were forced out instead. So they came up with an alternative explanation and an alternative to the alternative as well, right? But what happens if you just force everybody into the conspiracy in one way or another by threatening their families, whatever it might be? And there's plenty of stories waiting in the wings about that. Maybe we can discuss a little bit about that. I'm sure we can get it in by Friday. But what if the president says, I want this dismissed because it's good for me politically, and the mayor says, I want it dismissed because it's good for me politically, and the Department of Justice says, we want it dismissed because it's good for us politically, and a judge says, I want it dismissed because I don't want to be threatened with murder, whatever. What happens if all that stuff happens? Well, then you still have, one of the things you haven't erased is the Bar Association's rules against this stuff. They didn't agree to change their rules. And there's no direct mechanism by which they can be forced to do so or to look the other way. So I guess eventually what it means is the members of the Attorney Grievance Committee in New York need to hire personal security and move to undisclosed locations if they want to uphold these rules. Well, we'll see how it goes for them. They certainly have every right to do it. It's their rules. So let's see how it plays out. They appear, it appears to American Oversight, at least, that Bove's agreement to go along with this appears to have violated several sections of New York's rules governing attorney ethics and professional conduct. How so? Letting an elected official off the hook for serious evidence-based criminal charges in exchange for venal political support is textbook corruption and could be grounds for suspension of an attorney's law license, said American Oversight interim, not acting, but interim executive director Chioma Chukwu. I hope I've got your name close to correct. As a member of the New York Bar, Mr. Bove is required to meet minimum standards of professional conduct. But the overwhelming weight of evidence suggests he has failed to do so. The rule of law isn't a political trading card. It must be applied equally and uniformly. And we urge the New York Attorney Grievance Committee to investigate and address Mr. Bove's actions before they become the norm at the U.S. Justice Department. I'm not certain what, let's say, a positive outcome with the Attorney Grievance Committee leads to what? His disbarment in New York? Does that mean he's not any longer a deputy attorney general? Not by itself, no. But I don't know what the rules are in terms of, like, does the deputy attorney general, whether or otherwise, mean that, do you have to have bar membership at all? I mean, I really don't know what the rules are. Presumably, has always been the case. Is it because it's required or just because it makes sense? And even if it is required, does that still mean anything for the Trump Justice Department? I don't know, but it's an action you can take and you might as well do it. And it serves to delegitimize the activity if you can get this ruling on the record. There's a recitation of the background of Bove's actions, but I think we've been over all of that. The details about American Oversight's disciplinary complaint. Shall we read a little bit of that? It's only a little more. The New York rules of professional conduct, like those of other states, hold lawyers in general and prosecutors and government lawyers in particular to a high standard as officers of the law. American Oversight's complaint details the specific items within the rules of professional conduct that Bove appears to have violated, such as instances of dishonesty and misrepresentation with regard to his claim that the dismissal, reportedly in exchange for Adams's political support, was appropriate. It was not. They're just saying it was. And, shouldn't that carry consequences? And his specious assertion that the charges had been a result of a weaponization of government and were therefore improper. In addition, Bove's actions constitute, quote, conduct that is prejudicial to the administration of justice, unquote. That's true, I would say. By paving the way for new attempts at striking similar deals and by attempting to induce other lawyers to engage in unethical behavior. He also appears to have violated the rule that lawyers should not, quote, knowingly assist or induce another, unquote, to, quote, engage in ellipsis. I'm reading you all the punctuation here. It's important. Engage in conduct that adversely reflects on the lawyer's fitness as a lawyer. Well, some of it is vague, but the examples, I think, are fairly egregious. They may very well succeed in getting this to happen. It's just a question of whether or not that has any practical impact on his ability to continue in the Department of Justice, whether in an capacity or otherwise. All right. As I said, many other things to get to, and it's time to try and turn to it. Let's see. Where will we go in terms of what ought to be next? Oh, I don't know. Here's an interesting piece. I saw it go by in Blue Sky, where I spend all of my time these days. And it was published in Common Dreams, which we read from time to time, but apparently based on reporting from CNN as well. But in this case, about CNN's attempts to report on something or other, but about Dodgy. The Common Dreams headline here is that CNN... This goes along with our discussion yesterday. Oh, that reminds me. There's something that needed an updating. I got a note to self here, but yesterday's pre-recorded pieces about various other firings, including the one firing that was of consequence, plus the end of a term coming up on the Merit Systems Protection Board. And we were kind of talking about the catch-22-ish situation in which people who had been fired across government all over the place who are being handed dismissal notices claiming that they were being fired for cause, i.e. poor performance, when in fact they had been reviewed only as exceptional performers, but really being fired because they were on probationary status, and that was low-hanging fruit for dodgy firings. That is to say, the government is within its rights to fire people more easily during their probationary period than it is once they become full-time official employees, and that they were even able to say, well, some of the people who have been serving long enough to have moved out from their probationary period into permanent employment status, in fact, hadn't done so. And they may even have a claim at that being correct, although I haven't seen the paperwork on it. But people were generally told that they had to serve a year in their position to graduate from probationary status. Then they did so. They were granted paperwork that said they had, in fact, graduated to full-time, full employment status. But then they were told, oh, we meant 2 years. And they may even be right about that. We're not sure, but that's what they're telling people. And at any rate, they were dismissing people left and right and telling them that they was dismissed for poor performance because somewhere in the Code of Federal Regulations it says one of the reasons you can fire people and nobody can ask questions about it is if you say it was for poor performance. Of course, people can ask questions about it. Was it for poor performance? And all you can say is, I don't know, we said it was. Isn't that enough? But that's a question for all sorts of people, administrative law judges eventually. But as a first resort, it is a question for the Merit Systems Protection Board to decide. Only Trump has fired one of the 3 members of the Merit System Protection Board, and another of them is set to have their term expire on March 1st, and they are not going to be around to process these complaints. And it's not clear what happens if they're not. I guess you can at that point then go perhaps straight to administrative law judges, but then you may find that the administrative law judges start getting fired as well. By the way, I should point out, administrative law judges, ALJs in the parlance, are not Article 3 lifetime appointments. They're not. They're a different category of judges. How easy is it to fire them? These days, it might be the snap of your fingers like Thanos, but maybe not. We don't know. We don't. There's a procedure. Are they going to follow it? We don't know. Is it going to matter? We don't know. That, ironically enough, will be decided in the regular courts, the Article 3 lifetime appointment courts. Will it be in D.C.? Probably. Will that mean that it comes out against Trump? It might. Will that mean it goes to the Supreme Court? Probably. Will that mean there's no law? Maybe. So we updated you on that. I want to update you on a couple more catch-22 situations. Like we said, if you're fired, you have the right to take it to the Merit Systems Protection Board. Oh, but there is no Merit System Protection Board. Here's a new one, a new twist on it, again, from Common Dreams. Who's written this up for Common Dreams? Eloise Goldsmith has done so. CNN made a Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, request about Dodgy. Good question, right? Only to learn that the FOIA staff had been fired. So that's a little bit more in another saga of the cover-up. The only thing is they're making no secret of the cover-up, and they may think, now the claim is, no, it's not cover-up. We're absolutely entitled to do this. Definitely never seen this type of response to a FOIA request, quipped one journalist. That's the subheader. And here's the way Eloise explains it. When CNN put in a Freedom of Information Act request with the Office of Personnel Management for information related to security clearances for billionaire Elon Musk and other personnel at the so-called, Department of Government Efficiency, and now it's called 10,000 other things. No, it's the U.S. Dodgy Service. It's the U.S. Dodgy Service Temporary something, I don't know. Any number, they're splitting it up into LLCs, like, that's the parallel model. But anyway, when they asked OPM under FOIA for information about security clearances for dodgy people, including Elon Musk, who have been allowed access to sensitive or classified government networks, and their access is becoming bigger and bigger by the moment, the outlet got an unexpected response. And here's the response. This is an interesting phrasing. Good luck with that. They just fired the whole privacy team. An OPM email address wrote back, according to Tuesday reporting from CNN. An OPM official told the outlet that the federal government's Human Resources Agency did not lay off the entire privacy team, but did not comment further on the matter. And as they said in the subheader here, definitely never seen this type of response to a FOIA request, quipped CBS News journalist Jim Laporta, reacting to the news on X. Not ecstasy, but Twitter. According to CNN, OPM's privacy team, quote, is tasked with ensuring the agency's data privacy practices meet legal requirements and protect the trust of the public. So F that. You're all fired. How do you like that? It's not that we're denying your FOIA request. It's that we're denying that there is FOIA staff. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. I was scrambling toward the end of the break there to see if I can find the information I was looking for, but so far, no. And that was, I thought that one of the stories we discussed yesterday in the pre-taped show, although the thing is, I can't remember which one, well, but there are a number of them that could easily be the case. In fact, this is the one. All right, so I can put this aside and come back to it because it's related to this. But one of the stories that I reported on yesterday in the pre-recorded thing had a development before the pre-taped show actually aired. A court had weighed in on the situation. And as it turns out, all right, maybe I'll just say it now. We'll spit it out and get it out there. The MSPB, Merit Systems Protection Board story has had further developments. Marissa Cabas, once again, on the spot in terms of bringing it to my attention. Kyle Cheney actually reported it, and Marissa labeled it as being huge, so we're going to pay attention to it. Kyle says yesterday that story just in, I guess this is dated Tuesday at 5:37 p.m., meaning that it was reported as I was finishing recording the pre-recorded show from yesterday, wherein I told you that one member of the 3-member MSPB board had been fired. Another one expected to have their term come to a conclusion at the beginning of March, thereby rendering it without a quorum to consider all of the complaints of the many, many, many people being fired across many, many government agencies. The development was that a federal judge has ordered the reinstatement of one Kathy Harris atop the Merit Systems Protection Board. She was chairing it at the time, ruling that Trump's decision to fire her exceeded his authority. So that seemed like good news, right? Marissa commenting, "This is huge. The administration is trying to dismantle the board so that government employees have nowhere to file termination grievances." We'll see how that plays out and what they're going to do next. But there is some screenshots of the order, although they are blurry and we can't read them very well. So I guess that saves us the decision of whether or not we'll try and make out the language. But suffice to say for now that a federal judge has ordered the reinstatement. Who is the federal judge? And can we see that part so that we know where that was happening? We don't have the signature page of the order. But seems like good news. Just wanted to point that out there. This stuff is so fast moving that even in the context of pre-recording something for the very next day, things are stale by the time they go to air. But just wanted to update you on that. Now we can turn back to the other pretzels that we're tying ourselves up with, the FOIA situation. Right. Again, it's not that we're saying we deny your right to have the information in FOIA, but, well, the old trick used to be, well, you'll get the information. It'll just take 7 years to process. Plus, you have to pay us fees for photocopying along the way. But the new trick is you're entitled to the information. It's just that there's no one here to photocopy it for you because we fired the whole team. Right? So an interesting response to the FOIA request about security clearances for dodgies. OPM answers, good luck with that. They just fired the whole privacy team. So according to CNN, OPM's privacy team is the one tasked with ensuring that the agency's data privacy practices meet legal requirements and protect the trust of the public. Sounds like a good thing to do. Members of the agency's communications staff and employees who handle the FOIA requests were also terminated, per CNN, which cited 2 unnamed sources. Federal agencies are required to furnish information requested via FOIA unless the information falls within an exemption, and there are plenty. National security exemptions, various other sources and methods stuff for intelligence community, any number of exceptions. The one they didn't contemplate is firing all of the staff who were supposed to make the determination about whether or not any of the exemptions apply, and if not, photocopying it and giving it to you. Wow. Those firings at OPM, which the Chief Human Resources Agency of the federal government, constitute a move that limits outside access to government records related to the security clearances granted to Elon Musk and his associates, according to CNN, citing unnamed sources familiar with the matter. OPM was one of the first federal agencies to be infiltrated by Musk's associates. I like that, infiltrated, at the dodgy service, and has been at the forefront of the Trump administration's purge of federal workers. Last month, OPM sent out the now infamous Fork in the Road memo, which offered a widely decried deferred resignation program for nearly all federal employees. The message resembled, including the verbatim wording of the subject line, an email that Musk sent Twitter employees in 2022 when he took over the social media platform now known as X. CNN's coverage also noted that the move to fire members of the OPM's privacy and communications teams echoes Musk's decision to fire the media relations department at Twitter. On X, Washington Post video journalist Jorge Ribas wrote the word transparency in response to CNN's reporting about the FOIA request, in an apparent nod to Musk's assertion that Dodgy is attempting to be transparent in carrying out its operations. That, of course, the allegation he made during the weirdo press conference with his son on his shoulders the whole time. We're being very transparent, except you're fired if you actually try to get any transparency out of us, or under arrest for asking the wrong questions. Another thing that he was simultaneously alleging on Twitter. While saying they were being transparent, he was also saying you should probably be arrested for asking most of these questions. A little bit difficult to resolve those two different positions. All right, let's see. Other things to bring to your attention. I got to do some quick scanning and see what fits where in all of this, and what have we here's another, I guess, a report from Wired about another department into which Dodgy staff have kicked their way. Dodgy now has access to the top U.S. cybersecurity agency, and what could go wrong with that? It is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, I guess CISA, which has both electoral security implications, intelligence operations implications, and, of course, political union with Russia to own the globalists implications. Dodgy technologists, including Edward Korstein, the 19-year-old known as Big Balls online, and Kyle Schutt, S-C-H-U-T-T, are now listed as staff at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They're moving around all over the place. They're government employees for 15 minutes at each of the agencies that they go into to pull the plugs and wires out of the servers. Edward Korstein, you know who he is now on staff, allegedly, or purportedly, on staff at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, Wired has confirmed. Well, when they say confirmed, what does that mean? Wired has become convinced that it is the assertion with some basis in reality at CISA. Somebody has said, yes, I'm willing to tell the press and go on record and tell the press this person now works here. I don't know what they really do. I don't know whether the person who said it is lying. I don't know whether the person who said it knows they're lying. I don't know whether the person who said it has authority to say so. I don't know whether they've filed any of the paperwork. But that person was clearly instructed to say that Korstein is an employee of CISA now. But then again, Emil Bove was instructed to say that the administration was within their rights to dismiss this case. And when the people who have the power to actually effectuate that, federal judges who sign the motions to that effect, say they are presented with the pleadings, they say, I'd like to take a closer look at this. And someone want to take a closer look at this too. But for now, the story is journalists have been told that people in a position that you're supposed to listen to as speaking for CISA have said he is an employee. I don't know whether that's really true. Just yesterday, somebody who's in a position to supposed to be able to say so, i.e. the President of the United States, Donald Trump, said again blatantly flying in the face of legal pleadings filed by Emil Bove and others at the Justice Department. Not Bove. Well, Bove is probably overseeing some of these other cases too. But Bove we associate most with the Adams case, but as Deputy Attorney General, or at least one of the Deputy Attorney Generals, is probably overseeing several of these cases. But the DOJ's position, of course, is in court that Elon Musk is not in charge of Dodgy. But yesterday, Trump, needed to do an applause line at a speech and said, oh no, he absolutely is in charge of Dodgy. And is that a problem for the legal pleadings in front of Article 3 judges? We have yet to find out. Anyway, so once again, that's the grain of salt you have to take with the reporting from Wired. All we're saying is we're being told something that in previous administrations you could take to the bank. When they say he's on the payroll there, he is, because they have no reason to lie, and they're embarrassed to do so about something like this. Not the case here in this administration. CISA referred Wired to the Department of Homeland Security, of which it's a component agency, CISA, that is, when reached for comment. DHS did not immediately reply to a request for comment, but they might have fired everybody who's allowed to reply. Who knows? Korstein, briefly an intern for Musk's brain-computer interface company, Neuralink, as Wired has reported, has been working his way through numerous federal agencies and departments as a Dodgy operative since January. He has been tracked at the General Services Administration, the Office of Personnel Management, the State Department, and FEMA. No word, though, on whether or not there were ever any claims that he was employed there while he was working there. For some reason, CISA says yes. I don't know whether that's been standard protocol to lie that he's an employee in order to justify his access at all these places, or this is where they want him to land, so that's where they made him an employee. We'll have yet to see. Let's see. At State's Bureau of Diplomatic Technology, he potentially had access to systems containing sensitive information about diplomats and many sources around the world who provide the U.S. government with intelligence and expertise. And of course, remember, this is the guy who comes to the job having been fired by the internet security firm where he had an internship, and who, for whatever reason, spends his off hours tied up in Discord servers frequented by cyber criminals. Not an issue. As the journalist Marisa Cabas was first to report, he has now moved to CISA, a division of DHS. He's listed at the staff directory as a senior advisor, though he's not senior to anybody. He's not even a senior in college, as a matter of fact. A second dodgy worker, Schutt, has also joined Korstein at CISA. Schutt has reportedly also been at the GSA. Prior to his work with Dodgy, he worked on the launch of WinRed, a fundraising platform for Republicans that helped the party raise $1.8 billion during the 2024 election campaigns. In other words, right, WinRed. What is that? Oh, it's Act Blue, but for Republicans. You know about that. One of many things that they have tried to copy along the way. It's not clear yet what level of access Korstein might have to data and networks at CISA, but basically you should just assume everything. But the agency, which is responsible for the defense of civilian federal government networks and works closely with critical infrastructure owners around the country, stores a lot of sensitive and critical security information on its networks. So good stuff to sell on the black market. This includes information about software vulnerabilities, breaches, and network risk assessments conducted for local and state election offices. And remember, he's the one that was also at Treasury and installing backdoors and monkeying around in the code such that you would not any longer be able to reliably trace whether or not those backdoors were in fact installed. Interesting question, given that Trump and Musk claim to be on their way to Fort Knox, because we got to see if the gold is still there. We don't know. No one really knows. And then they can erase the records of how much gold was there afterwards if they need to. Just saying. Since 2018, CISA has helped state and local election offices around the country assess vulnerabilities in their networks and help secure them. CISA also works with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the National Security Agency to notify victims of breaches and process information about software vulnerabilities before the information becomes public. So they are a good parallel to what's happening at the CDC. In a way, right? When we have a disease outbreak, we let people know so that they can act appropriately and we limit the spread of disease. But that's also kind of embarrassing. So what if we just don't report that anymore? Not only is it embarrassing, but it might lead to people calling for travel restrictions or lockdowns. And we hate those things, or masking or vaccination. So because MAGA hates all those things, we're not going to have a CDC anymore. We're just not going to report on that, and we're not going to monitor danger. Similarly, because our people keep getting arrested trying to infiltrate these computer systems, Tina Peters, the clerk in Colorado, rotting in state prison right now for having done so. But she made the mistake of not taking over the federal government first. And, of course, getting indicted on state charges. Dang. But it won't be long before Trump, as king, says he's got the right to do pardon state charges as well. Anyway, so we won't be notifying anybody of any breaches. And that's convenient because they're busy breaching everything. And now you'll never find out about it. And if you do find out about it, we'll erase the records that you found out about it, and maybe the records that you exist as well. Quercetin, as Wired has previously reported, worked briefly in 2022 for Path Network, a network monitoring firm known for hiring reformed black hat hackers, and him, who's not reformed, I guess. According to security journalist Brian Krebs, an account once associated with him was also previously linked with a loosely formed cyber criminal community known as the COM, whose members have been responsible for various hacking operations in the last few years, including the hack of numerous Snowflake accounts. Korstein has not been associated with the Snowflake breaches, but, as Wired has reported, an account that has been associated with him did appear to suggest that the owner of the account, was seeking to help to conduct a distributed denial of service attack, a criminal technique that involves launching extensive traffic at a domain to disable it and prevent legitimate traffic from reaching it. Krebs also reported that Path had fired Quercetin for allegedly leaking internal documents to a competitor. The Washington Post reported last week that Korstein has been assigned to the DHS as a senior advisor, but didn't indicate what part of the sprawling agency he had joined. What's the point of fighting cybercrime if we're just going to give access for government networks to people with cyber criminal gang affiliations? Asks a cybersecurity researcher who tracks cyber criminal groups. And that's a damn good question. But just wanted to let you know what the latest was on his activities. That may no longer be the latest, but it seemed like an important one for us to track. Let's see. Moving on. We're going to have problems getting back into Pocket again. Sure, why not? Yeah, Pocket becoming very hinky about these things. All right. Limited opportunity to dive in any further, but why don't we head back to this one? This may take us through to the end, but hey, maybe not. Vanity Fair. Can I read the original? I think I put aside the text somewhere in case I find myself locked out at some point, but always worth reading what Gabriel Sherman has to say over at Vanity Fair. I mentioned that there were members of the government at various levels and in various branches who might be coerced to cooperate unwillingly with some of these schemes because of fear of threat to their families. And we always are wondering whether that is reality or hyperbole, even though we've actually been given evidence along the way that it is quite real. Well, here's some more in the form of the Vanity Fair piece entitled, and we have to use their title here, so don't come crying to me if you think that I have mislabeled this piece in Apple Podcasts or whatever it is as clean. It's not me, it's them. They're scared shitless. And it's okay to say that because now we're saying that there's none of this fecal matter around, so it's gone. See, so it's not, I don't know. Anyway, they're scared shitless. The threat of political violence informing Trump's grip on Congress. And by the way, the mention of how scared they are is a direct quote that is noted in the headline here. The subheader says, with the president smashing norm after norm, even lawmakers within his party have feared for their personal safety, and at least one has told confidants that it has swayed his decision-making. Who is it? Wait till you find out this time around. In the past week, Donald Trump has signaled a desire to rule like a strong man rather than as president constrained by constitutional norms. So, and that reminds me, we got to bring you all of the links to see him bragging about himself as a king. Yeah, we mentioned some of those. Last Friday, Trump's vice president, J.D. Vance, scolded Democratic NATO allies and met with the leader of Germany's extreme right AfD party, which, by the way, apparently AfD's approval ratings went down after meeting with J.D. Vance, which people have commented on. You have to be some kind of a guy if meeting with you damages the reputation of Nazis. On Saturday, Trump declared on social media, quote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." Everyone saw that happen. On this Tuesday, Trump blamed Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky for the brutal war that was launched by Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. Quote, "You should have never started it," Trump falsely said of Zelensky, when in fact Putin invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. The U.S. president then doubled down on the feud Wednesday, calling Zelensky a dictator. And as you know, every Republican accusation is a confession. Democrats are in the minority in both the House and the Senate, which means the federal courts and congressional Republicans are the only guardrails on Trump's second term. So far, the judicial system seems to be holding, though a Trump-packed Supreme Court is now destined to rule on all manner of alleged overreach in the coming months. And it's an open question as to whether Trump will actually abide by rulings that go against him. Republicans in Congress, however, have consistently folded, approving all of Trump's cabinet picks, such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, with only a faint whiff of pushback on some of their boundary-scorching backgrounds. By the way, Republicans, Steve Bannon, etc., already saying that the lesson of all of this is that Matt Gaetz was confirmable. They shouldn't have backed off of his nomination for Attorney General, although they're getting everything that they wanted and more out of Pam Bondi. So I don't know that it means anything, but they certainly believe that they could have pushed that through. And it's hard to doubt them. Anyway, the confirmations predictably short-circuited many Democratic observers, but the rolling headlines of late have even some Republicans decrying the seeming erosion of checks and balances in recent weeks. These are the heirs of the greatest generation, and they turned out to be the worst generation, said Stuart Stevens, who used to be the worst himself, but now served as chief strategist on Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign. Oh, I'm sorry, that's when he was the worst. And has since left the GOP, joining the anti-Trump Lincoln Project, a senior advisor. That's his post-worst career, right? Anyway, maybe. It's tempting to compare Republicans to Prussian aristocrats in the 1930s Germany, but Prussian aristocrats were more responsible. I'll take his word for it. They were dealing with civil unrest and the threat of a communist takeover. Republicans today have historically low unemployment, a record stock market. What's their excuse? Political survival is one. Senate and House Republicans know Trump will orchestrate the running of a primary challenge backed by Elon Musk's unlimited resources if a member defies him. That's still purportedly the case, I would say. I don't know that he's ever really manifested it. There's no reason to doubt that he could or would, but I guess it's really up to Elon Musk. So you got to ask him. But anyway, and he'll say yes. But we'll see whether he actually puts up money for any of this stuff. But this is not the whole story of Republican subservience to the president. In private, Republicans talk about their fear that Trump might incite his MAGA followers to commit political violence against them if they don't rubber stamp his actions. They're scared shitless, once again, about death threats and Gestapo-like stuff, a former member of Trump's first administration told me. Clearly true. According to one source with direct knowledge of the events, North Carolina's Senator Thom Tillis told people that the FBI warned him about, quote, credible death threats when he was considering voting against Pete Hegseth's nomination for defense secretary. Tillis ultimately provided the crucial 50th vote to confirm the former Fox and Friends host and drunk to lead the Pentagon. According to the source, Tillis has said that if people want to understand Trump, they should read the 2006 book Snakes in Suits, When Psychopaths Go to Work. When asked for comment about this story, or asked for comment for this story, a spokesperson for Tillis said it was false that the senator had recommended the book in that capacity. The FBI said it had no comment. Anyway, lots of speculation as well about whether the FBI really did that, and they're not sure where the breakdown is here. We don't know. Was it that the FBI made it up in order to freak him out? Was it that they didn't make it up, but there were such threats? Was it that Tillis is making it up that the FBI told him? No one can be sure. Could be any one or all of these things at some level. From the moment Trump descended his golden escalator in June of 2015 to announce his first run for president, he injected menace into his political rhetoric. On the campaign trail, he talked about wanting to punch protesters in the face. During his first term, he praised Montana's then Representative Greg Gianforte for physically attacking Guardian reporter Ben Jacobs in 2017. Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my type, Trump said. Gianforte later pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault and received a 6-month deferred jail sentence, by the way, and then went on to greater electoral success after that. When protests erupted after a Minneapolis police officer murdered George Floyd in 2020, Trump called protesters thugs and said, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." The phrase echoed a remark made in the 1960s by a Miami police chief associated with stoking racial tensions in the city. Trump claimed he wasn't aware of its origins. In a September 2020 debate against Joe Biden, Trump refused to condemn white supremacist violence and told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. You remember all of that. January 6th further catalyzed GOP fear of Trump-inspired violence. Romney told his biographer, McKay Coppins, that an undercurrent of anxiety thwarted Republican efforts to formally punish Trump for his role in inciting the riot. They could have ended this whole thing right then and there, but decided not to for some reason. One Republican congressman confided to Romney that he wanted to vote for Trump's second impeachment, but chose not to out of fear for his family's safety. Coppins wrote in his book, when one senator, a member of leadership, said he was leaning toward voting to convict, the others urged him to reconsider. You can't do that. Romney recalled someone saying, think of your personal safety, said another. Think of your children. The senator eventually decided they were right. And, as we mentioned earlier about the Cheneys, former Wyoming representative and prominent anti-Trump Republican Liz Cheney told CNN that House GOP members confided to her that they were, quote, afraid for their own safety, afraid in some instances for their lives. Representative Jason Crow of Colorado told NBC News after January 6th, quote, I had a lot of conversations with my Republican colleagues last night, and a couple of them broke down in tears, saying that they are afraid for their lives if they vote for this impeachment. Well, that's old news, I guess. You all knew about that. Time for us to exit anyway. But apparently all happening again, and Tom Tillis, the new target of it. So no surprise there. This is all good background, and Gabe lays it out as a good reminder for any of you who might have forgotten each of the instances. We haven't read all of them. There's still many, many more, but apparently still going on. And Tom Tillis, the latest quote-unquote victim, I guess you could say, of it. And by the way, how often will Republican members be told that there are credible threats against their lives and the lives of their families once Kash Patel is the guy in charge of instructing the FBI to tell people this? Will Kash Patel be telling the truth? Will he just say there are credible threats? Will he be making those credible threats? Will he be directing others to make those credible threats so that he can then point to them and say, there it is, a credible threat? Or will members of Congress come to understand that if they tell the public that they were told by the FBI that there was a credible threat against their lives, that people will understand, well, there was nothing you could do. After all, there probably are credible threats against your lives. Some of them may be coming from within the FBI. Maybe they are the FBI making those threats. Maybe it's Emil Bove making those threats. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I just wanted to sort of update you on the fact that that's still happening, though I suspect you knew that.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
You know, for us, it's not quite enough to just say we suspect that was happening. We want some documentation, and there's more to come as Justice Putnam brings you his round of documentation for all the terrible things happening around the country and around the world on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. And guess what? Emil Bove is at the top of the list. Then comes Dodgy. Stay tuned.